welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast series. I'm Nina Lockwood, founder and director of Intuitive Interim and Executive Search. Throughout this series, I will be sharing engaging conversations with talented leaders from across the UK transport sector. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Intuitive Insights podcast with me, Nina Lockwood, and my guest, Ben Milway, Finance and Business Systems Director from MTR Elizabeth line. Ben takes us through his career to date and shares his views on the opportunities ahead of us for the UK rail industry. Please enjoy. Ben Milway, Finance and Business Systems Director for MTR Elizabeth line. A huge and very warm welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast. It's a delight to have you here. Thank you for joining us. And I think I'm correct in saying that you have the honour of being the first person with finance and business systems to appear on the podcast. So,
great. I hope I did the accountancy profession proud.
Absolutely. I'm confident you will. So we, in time-honoured fashion, Ben, we know that our Intuitive Insights audience really enjoys hearing about the senior people in our industry, how you got to where you currently are today. What was that journey? So what's been the journey so far? And I would love to know what a finance and business systems director does all day. So if I can ask you to take us right back to the beginning of your career and give us a whistle-stop tour through where you came from and where you've been, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
No, brilliant. Thanks, Nina. So I was very lucky in that before I started a career in finance, I had 5 years working as a jobbing musician. So 5 years working as a freelancer, doing weddings, doing bar mitzvahs, kind of playing any gig that paid, a bit of teaching. And it was a fantastic training ground. I mean, 5 years of kind of freelance work, it gives you a real appreciation of salary, of security, of weekends, of holidays. And don't get me wrong, it was brilliant. I had a fantastic time. I got to go on tour, got to go and play in bands, got to make music for a living. So it's fantastic. But also, after 5 years, I realised that that wasn't the lifestyle I wanted. So kind of took the lessons from that, but realised that I'm a drummer. So playing drums for a living, although fantastic, actually I wanted to do something else and keep playing drums, keep having that, but have something else as my own profession. So I was very fortunate. After 5 years of making music for a living, I got a place on the Network Rail graduate scheme.
Oh, wow.
And Network Rail is a fantastic training ground. I mean, I recommend it to anybody. The apprentice schemes, the graduate schemes, they really invest in people, like bringing them in, people from a very diverse range of backgrounds, different ages, but bringing people into the organisation and training them really well, giving them great exposure, great experience, excellent mentors, and a chance to really grow, develop, and ultimately huge opportunities afterwards for having a great career. So I was very fortunate to join the Network Rail Finance graduate scheme.
Right, okay.
And so there's some really great alumni from the scheme, kind of all over the rail industry now.
Yeah.
And lots still in Network Rail, some have spread into other industries, but had a fantastic couple of years kind of doing that graduate scheme. They put you through your accountancy training very quickly, so you kind of get that fundamental done, sorted, and also get a chance to experience the whole organisation. So you get a chance to kind of work on the front line. You get a chance to kind of work on the front line of finance too, which in the finance world is accounts payable, where you're kind of processing invoices. A chance to meet very senior leadership and the CFO, so Jeremy Westlake now, previously Patrick Butcher. They're very kind of engaged in the scheme, kind of helping, supporting, challenging, and kind of gives you a fantastic opportunity and ability to get really well established in the organisation. Had an absolutely fantastic time, met some brilliant people, and then fortunate again, kind of following the scheme to move into kind of HQ level roles. So you get a chance to kind of go straight into seeing the whole organisation, getting a feel for how it all fits together. I guess we all know the railway is a pretty complex organisation, setup of organisations. So being able to work in HQ role, being able to kind of, at that point it was in the maintenance function. So back when Network Rail, pre-devolution, when it was Steve Featherstone, one big maintenance organisation, kind of working in a kind of group consolidation role there, it gives you a chance to get a real look and feel for the industry, and for how the various bits of it bolt together. So yeah, very fortunate. I then moved into frontline roles. So my first kind of, I guess, the place where I really earned my spurs. So Senator Rail, the kind of maintenance organisation, the kind of finance support for that is in the delivery units. So the functions of the organisation that kind of are on the real front line, delivering maintenance day in, day out, and being a finance support for those organisations, you get a chance to be part of a really amazing team. And those teams kind of every night, and the delivery unit I was part of was in Euston. So every night the Euston team kind of going out and making sure the West Coast main line operated well the next day. And being the kind of finance support to try and help them make the best decisions possible, to use their limited funds, to get the best outcomes, to support their teams, to get the right choices around headcount and choices around which contractors and equipment to use. So a fantastic opportunity to work on the front line and get a real feel for how the railway works kind of practically, kind of what the actual things that need to go on to make sure the service is ready to operate the next day. I guess within that role, I also got a chance to go outside, kind of don my orange, my blue hat, and kind of go out with the teams on the ground and see what's going on, get a feel for the actual maintenance tasks they do, go and see the high output ballast train doing its thing, ripping up track, relaying track, and get a feel for where the money goes ultimately. I guess as an industry, we spend a lot of money. Being able to see and picture what the activity entails, I think, for anybody who wants a career in finance, understanding the business fundamentals. So quite fortunate after that role, working in finance, working in the front line. Again, Network Rail is a fascinating organisation to work for because it's constantly in change, constantly being reorged, and that always presents opportunity. And I was very lucky then to kind of have my role broadened, to look after operations too, to work with signallers, to get a feel for how kind of operations part of the organisation fits together. And then eventually, at the beginning of CP5, I moved across to the Anglia route, where I took my first financial controller role. And that was a real kind of, again, quite a formative period for me, kind of moving from being a business partner to financial controller. You suddenly have a lot more accountability and you're signing the books off. The buck stops with you in terms of the finances. And that was a brilliant experience. It also gave me a great insight into what happens when the plan goes wrong, in terms of when I moved to Anglia, it was the first day of CP5. And for those of you who have the history of Network Rail, history of the control periods, CP5, the plan had some fundamental challenges in it, a big push for efficiency, and in many areas unachievable. So moving into an organisation with a plan that from day dot wasn't deliverable, again, huge learning curve, very formative, great chance to understand how you go through that strategic process of changing a plan and developing a revised plan for a control period.
That scares the
life out of me. Following for I know, absolutely. And it's in those moments you learn the most, don't you? There's moments where kind of you realise actually the kind of way we thought we were going to operate is not going to work. So a year of kind of
I agree.
Recalibration, replanning, and then it's a big organisation as well. So taking people with you on the journey. We say this is what we thought we were going to be doing. Actually, we've got to change some of our aspirations, some of our plans, and we're going to just go off in this direction instead. And that wasn't just in Anglia. I mean, across the whole organisation, the Great Western Electrification was kind of most notable area in which costs were very different to what was assumed in the plan. But all of those changes meant complete rewrite of the plan and a control period with lots and lots of change in it. But for me personally, brilliant. Loads of learning, loads of chance to get stuck into new stuff.
That's it. I think when everything's going right, it's great, isn't it? It's a lovely feeling for however long it lasts. But it's actually, on reflection, when you look back and you think, do you know what, the areas, the times when I learned the most, certainly from my own perspective, the times when I learned the most about finance is when things get really squeaky, and it's kind of right. You've got to rob Peter to pay Paul. You've got to cut your cloth accordingly, and as you've said, you've got to bring people with you as well, and also kind of keep your own head up, because it's a massive challenge. It's huge, isn't it? Kind of numbers you must have been dealing with as well at that point. Huge.
Absolutely. And Network Rail is kind of unique in that very early on in your career, you get to deal with some massive numbers. You get to deal with kind of hundreds of millions of pounds very quickly. And you don't get that exposure in most other organisations. So you're very lucky. And I got to work with some brilliant people. So people like Richard Schofield, who's I subsequently work with again now. He's over at MTR, Elizabeth line. People like Melia Dumas, who's currently the regional FD for the Eastern region in Network Rail. So some brilliant people who really kind of helped me grow through that period. And following that kind of period of growth, I was very lucky in that so Richard Schofield left Network Rail, Melia Dumas stepped up, and I got a chance to cover my first finance director role for a year on secondment, which again, brilliant learning opportunity, great chance to kind of take that next level of accountability, and also be very involved in creating the CP6 plan. Having lived through a very challenging CP5, it was really satisfying to be able to take those lessons learned, that knowledge, the kind of pain we've been through, and flow it into a much a plan which we could really see line of sight of how we're going to deliver, and kind of ownership from creating the plan through to delivering it. So that was really satisfying to be part of that journey. Following that, so in that part of my career, I've been very involved in the kind of operations and maintenance part of the industry, which again, fascinating part of the industry. There's a whole other half of it I hadn't really got my teeth stuck into, and that's the big capital projects. So the huge renewals, enhancements the industry does, kind of spending billions of pounds a year. So I was fortunate at that point that I got an opportunity to go and work in Birmingham. So I started one of the kind of, I say crazy railway commutes, but they're quite common in the railway. People who undertake fairly crazy journeys on a daily basis. So each day I was commuting from London to Birmingham and back again. So I'd be up on the first train at Euston, shooting up the West Coast Main Line. And again, fantastic opportunity to be the finance director for the IP Central area of Network Rail.
Right.
So amazing portfolio of projects, getting to support HST or Network Works, East West Rail, kind of a massive domestic portfolio of renewals, kind of the tail end of electrification in the Northwest. Really fascinating portfolio and a great learning curve for me again. Who you may know, he's the kind of capital delivery director, but a great chance to get involved in a new part of the organisation, to broaden my knowledge of people as well. Because ultimately, having worked in the south of the company, like again, Network Rail, kind of people tend to spend their whole career in certain areas, so a chance to kind of move across and meet the London Northwest and Central community, which again, brilliant opportunity. I then followed that with another stint back in Anglia as finance director. I've got a fairly young family, so it was a great opportunity then, when the third baby arrived, to come back to London and be a bit closer to home, to kind of balance the looking after the family plus looking after the career. And I was very lucky, actually. I got to work compressed hours, so actually got to be a bit of a kind of hands-on father as well, working 4 days a week. And Network Rail again, brilliant in supporting that sort of the ability to work compressed hours, the ability to balance family life and home life. So working compressed hours, I'd recommend it to anybody, especially when the kids are young. It's been a brilliant opportunity to really kind of play a very active role in their lives, whilst also doing a job I get lots of fun out of.
How long ago was that, Ben? When were you doing that, the compressed hours?
So 3 years ago.
Right. It's quite it's still very unusual to hear, and I do, I know a number of people who do it, but I think because we've all now been through this, oh gosh, you don't have to work 5 days a week from 9 till 5:30 or whatever your hours, normal hours would be. And so it's quite interesting to hear that this kind of stuff is going on. It's happening in many different organisations, but we just don't hear about it. And also we don't hear about it as much from fathers. We're more likely to hear about it from mothers. It's brilliant to hear that was available to you, and obviously that you've took full advantage of it. Fantastic.
Absolutely. And Network Rail is very good in that regard. They've got a really kind of straightforward policy, kind of real incentive for line managers to do the right thing by their staff, and they recognise the benefits you get from it, getting engaged teams, productive teams. And as you say, I really hope that this new move to a hybrid way of working promotes it even further, because there's massive opportunities for fathers and mothers to get the right balance between home life and work life.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Sorry, I stopped you in your flow then.
No, it's fine. Just to kind of bring up to the latest part. So after a couple of years as Anglia finance director, the opportunity arose to kind of join the MTR Elizabeth line team, which is the move I wanted to make for a while to kind of work on the other side of the industry, to go and work for a train operating company.
Yeah.
And especially doing it at the moment as well, with so much industry change coming along. Going to work for a concession, which is kind of got a really a fascinating model, which has worked really well in the Elizabeth line. I think it's kind of looking at the way performance has been transformed on the parts of the network we currently look after. It's testament to kind of what this model can do when it's implemented in the right way. And working very closely with our client RFL to get some great outcomes for passengers. So it's been I joined MTR EL during lockdown, so in November 20. And so yeah, kind of coming up to my 9 months, 10 months into the role. And it's fascinating as well, because there's certain members of my team I haven't met in person yet. I'm in the office. I'm in the office today, and I'm in the office quite a lot because it suits me. But equally, we're kind of slowly moving into the hybrid way of working, and some people are still kind of making the kind of transition, and we're not rushing that. We're kind of taking it at people's own pace. But yeah, people I speak to on a daily basis, I've not actually met in person, so I'm kind of working through that.
It's quite bizarre, isn't it? It's quite bizarre. So and I am really keen to understand what your role entails, because I know you've said to me as well that, whilst yes, it's finance and business systems, there's a lot more to it than that area. But I want to just kind of take you back a little bit to the kind of right at the beginning, when you said you were a drummer, you were a jobbing musician. You did that for 5 years, and then you went and went on the graduate scheme at Network Rail. How does a drummer decide to go and work for Network Rail? Can you talk me through that thought process, Ben? What was it that attracted you to the rail industry?
It's a great question. I've always had a passion for transport, kind of as a kid, liking cars, but I guess it's something about I guess the engineering side of it. The fact that it kind of involves some really cool machinery, both in the kind of operations and in the kind of fixed track, and also the fact it impacts such a range of people's lives. Like it's a massive public good. The difference we can make to people's lives is kind of huge and profound, and it's really rewarding to be part of that. I guess kind of pre-joining, I had an inkling that it would be a great place to go and work, but kind of having come here, it's absolutely met its expectations. Right. It's also been a growth industry the time I've been here as well. So a great place to join and kind of see the kind of growth, development, investment. Some challenges now, but equally, I'm an absolute optimist about the kind of future for rail and the future for transport, kind of fundamental to our journey to a low carbon economy. Yeah. I think also some of the people involved in transport, I mean, people you kind of know already, kind of just interacting on a daily basis, kind of seeing their passion for this place and the way of working, really attracted me to the rail industry. I had a background kind of having done a degree in philosophy, economics, and I did a bit of transport as part of that. So I had a kind of bit of a background in kind of numerate world, and I decided that I'd like to kind of get a finance qualification because it's a great foundation, and I'd recommend it to anybody, whether you want to be an accountant or not. Having a finance foundation just helps you in so many avenues later. I'm a SEMA qualified accountant, and again, I'd recommend it to anybody as a great way of kind of getting those business fundamentals down.
Yeah, it does. It gives you a great understanding, doesn't it, of, as you say, the foundations, because ultimately, if you get that part of your business right, then it's really helpful with the rest of it. So before I kind of go on to the next part, give me an overview. What does a week in the life of Ben Milway look like at MTR Elizabeth line?
So I'm really fortunate, and I've got a very diverse role, which again kind of makes it kind of really satisfying. And that diversity kind of helps keep very engaged. Lots of new stuff coming. So I guess there's a core finance bit. So we're lucky in that we're a well-sized train operating company, so we can, and because we're part of quite a small group, so MTR in the UK hasn't got a huge entity. It means actually we keep a lot of functions actually in our business. So we've got the kind of standard financial accounting part of the organisation, management accounting part of the organisation, who kind of keep the finance fundamentals running, and also kind of help the business make the best choices possible, kind of do the analysis to make them really help them understand how we're performing as an organisation. I also look after audit and risk and business resilience. There's a great chance to then have that kind of check and balance, the ability to get involved in lots of different bits of the organisation, and kind of make sure we are delivering the best outcomes possible. I look after innovation. So innovation's absolutely in MTR's blood. I mean, it comes from our Hong Kong parent, but the kind of innovation process and investment innovation is really deeply embedded in our corporate culture. And we've got a fantastic team here kind of helping promote, drive, kind of put the right framework on innovation and make sure we deliver some brilliant outcomes. I also look after the data and intelligence team. So it's quite a new part of the organisation.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of bringing together the reams of railway data and helping to turn that into kind of structured information and ultimately derive some great insight.
Yeah.
I think lots of parts of the industry are quite guilty of underinvestment, and that's as much kind of part of the history of kind of how the industry has been through privatisation. But there's tons more we can do in that space, and I've got a brilliant team looking at our reams of data and driving insight out of it. I look after procurement and the kind of commercial arm too.
Yeah.
So that's post-contract and pre-contract. And again, we're quite, as a train operating company, we've done some big capital investment schemes. So we recently completed a £20 million piece of work at Liverpool Street Station on behalf of Rail for London. Again, quite unique in the train operating sphere. And then, it's kind of commercial support surrounding that to make sure we kind of work collaboratively to deliver some great outcomes. And that's been a great project. It's delivered on time, delivered under budget. In some really challenging circumstances. Yeah, one we're really proud of, actually.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of coming to the conclusion now.
Yeah.
And it is the whole project.
On time is great, Ben, but under budget, flipping heck.
Yeah.
I think there's a few gold stars need putting on the wall for that one.
And that's despite kind of everything was set in place, the budget was set pre-COVID as well. So we've had to kind of add in all the COVID mitigations, kind of extra staffing, kind of extra time for doing certain processes to make it COVID safe, and we've still managed to bring it under budget. So really proud of the team who've delivered some great outcomes there. And then finally, I look after IT and business systems. So kind of quite a conventional IT department, kind of running the kind of core infrastructure, but also the business systems part where we do lots of innovation project work, looking at CCTV analytics systems and kind of smart poster boards on the wall. Lots of kind of IT innovation as well.
There's some really exciting stuff happening isn't there, in that area? Some really innovative stuff. Yeah, I get fascinated because I am so far removed from being a technical person you could possibly get, and it scares me a bit. But when I'm talking to people and they're telling me about what's happening and how we're kind of gathering information, how we're using technology to help us understand our customers better, just things like this piece of kit that they've got, I think it's at Waterloo, where they're tracking from GPS signals on people's phones. I know London Underground have been doing it for years, where they can see which station people get on at, where do they get off, where do they go from there, what route do they take. It's absolutely blows my mind that we know this kind of stuff, really, I find it really interesting.
Absolutely. And the way in which you can translate that to even better experiences for our customers, I think is it's I'm very fortunate coming into a train operating company where it's absolutely at our core is thinking about what next can we do to make our customers have an even better journey. And the way in which the organisation was set up, kind of bringing in kind of customer experience professionals from the outset as opposed to just railway folk, I think has had a great impact.
Yeah, fantastic. One of the phrases that you've used quite a lot as we've gone through this discussion so far is there's kind of a variation on I've been very lucky, I've been very fortunate, and I do think that luck exists, but I also think you make your own, and I think you have to have your antennae up to spot it. When there's an opportunity, then I think that you need to be kind of aware that it's there. The next kind of what I'm really keen to understand, Ben, in relation to your career to date, have there been some pivotal moments for you that you look back and say, that when that happened, that changed things? Almost, I don't know whether it might be a sliding door moment, or you can look back and say, actually that was fundamental, or when that happened, or when I went into that role, or when I got that opportunity. What stands out for you?
So a real key formative moment for me was my first role working with a frontline team. So working in the use and delivery unit, a chance to interact with frontline teams, to understand their kind of challenges, what makes their business tick, But then also an initiative that David Higgins launched called The Big Picture, which was around having great safety culture conversation discussions with all the frontline teams.
Right.
And I was lucky to become one of the hosts of those conversations. So I did shifts throughout the whole organization, day shifts, night shifts, kind of meeting the teams kind of at their place of work, kind of half an hour before they started shift, and having a really good conversation around safety, about their perception of safety culture and the key things they wanted to change. Great learning curve for me, kind of finding out about how it really works at 2 a.m. in Watford when you're preparing for a shift of welders to go out, kind of what it really looks and feels like. A great chance to kind of take some of those stories, some of those feelings, and feed that back to the centre, and then see that kind of go round and ultimately kind of come to fruition in terms of Safe Work Leader and what the changes they're making in terms of how frontline teams operating and moving red zone. So it's taken a long time to get there, but some of those changes are really kind of starting to flow through the organisation. But for me, having those safety conversations was a really formative moment and gave me a real appreciation of how the organisation worked.
And not something I would imagine that when you started on your graduate scheme in the finance function that was ever on the list of things you thought you'd be doing. But to then have that experience and the front line, I'm interested to know, I guess, was this a plan? Was there a plan behind this? Because what you've done is actually, kind of, if somebody was going to say, have a career plan, start in the centre, learn about the infrastructure as you've done. You've focused on a particular function, but you've been able to stretch outside of that to see, kind of, in your words, where the money goes. And I love that. So it's kind of don't work in isolation and count your beans or move your beads over on what must be an enormous abacus at Network Rail. So it's about so much more than that. But then you've taken that, you've gone into capital projects to look at really big stuff and kind of look at it on a UK wide basis, and then into those kind of the operational side. So you've really kind of been everywhere, Ben, haven't you?
It's been a great journey. There was never really a plan, but I've always been a curious person, and I've always let that curiosity kind of guide me a bit. So when I feel like I've learned and I'm part of the organisation and kind of understand it well, kind of moving on to the next bit to kind of really understand it, meet the people, kind of understand how it ticks. Kind of saying yes a lot, I think, has always served me well, is saying yes whenever I can, because you just get a chance to learn something new, to meet some new people and to develop yourself.
Yeah, I love that. So moving on to the industry at large, and you alluded to it earlier, we are going through some change and transformation, I think it's fair to say, which was on the cards anyway, but the experience of the pandemic has just accelerated things quite significantly, obviously. This is the bit in our conversation where I get my magic wand out and I say, so Ben, looking at the industry, what do you think are the opportunities that we've got ahead of us? And if you were in charge, if you were in that position where you could say, this is what needs to change, what would your 3 wishes be for the things that would change, and in what way?
Brilliant, thanks, Nina. So one of the kind of key opportunities, I think, is to really build the kind of customer centricity into the railway. I think lots of really kind of competent, kind of well-intentioned people doing a great job, it doesn't always come together in a great outcome for our customers and our passengers. And actually, I think we can design the kind of industry constructs better to help get great passenger outcomes, great customer outcomes. And I use both those terms because I do think there's a difference. And I think we need to kind of recognise the difference and work on both elements. Customers have more choice maybe than passengers, but making sure we're really focused on getting the best outcomes for them. I think there's a piece on devolution, that kind of work's been done, but there's so much more that can happen to kind of really empower local teams, really empower the organisations, kind of design them in a way in which they can respond to local communities, they can reflect local communities, and help that drive some of their decision making. And ultimately, I guess we'll all recognise the kind of regulatory framework in which we've worked, most of my career has been in. It's a bit bonkers, and it's ripe for transformation. And and kind of bringing into a space where it gets better outcomes, where it's simpler, where it's more intuitive, and which ultimately helps us deliver for our customers. So if I had 3 wishes, I guess, coming to work for a train operating company, it's brilliant seeing that the same passion, the same great people are on the train operating side as on the network rail side. There's still these silos which are kind of being created by the industry construct. I think there's lots we can do to break down those silos to get more cross-fertilization between network rail, train operating companies, RDG, all the private sector firms that are involved, and make sure we see the industry holistically, and help people have careers across the industry holistically and not get caught and held captive in one element of it. So I think the first thing is kind of breaking silos down. I think secondly, diversity. Again, MTR's done loads of work to kind of create a diverse workforce, be really effective of the communities we serve. I'm kind of really proud of the fact that almost a quarter of our organisation are women, but it's not 50%. There's still so much more to do. And I think as an industry, there's more we can do to kind of really reflect the communities we serve, to kind of push diversity, to kind of ensure we change some of the culture, which can sometimes hark back to kind of putting a cape on heroes, as opposed to kind of a more progressive culture, which is around being really well planned and organised.
I think that in terms of that whole agenda, that whole topic, I think as an industry, my personal view, having been working with the rail industry for 9 years now, I think that the intent is good, and I think that the awareness of the task ahead has improved significantly. So this, in the job I do as a headhunter, it's on the agenda automatically now. When we're looking at an assignment, we're talking about where the right candidates might come from, what the short list might look like. That was not happening. That was not happening 3 years ago. Never, this is a change. So I think there's more awareness, and I think that the intention is good. But I do think that we need to see more happening in terms of the actual delivery of that intention, which I think we're on the same sheet there. And that's certainly not, that's across industry. That's not one organisation. I think that's across the industry. There's work to be done. There's work being done, but there's quite a lot to do.
Absolutely. We had a great debate on it across our exec team, our strategic away day last week. And the piece around because ultimately kind of, for me, one of the key elements is kind of growing your own, kind of making sure your kind of people coming into your apprenticeship schemes, coming into your organisation, reflect that diversity, because that way you get the best opportunity to have that diversity at high levels.
Absolutely.
Lots of work for us to do.
What's going on?
And the last thing I'd really focus on is kind of bringing back even more of the pride in the industry. I think it has come a long way, but ultimately, I think there's more we can do to get people to be really proud to say they work in the railway. I think, I guess, some of the media perception, the fact that we haven't got an infrastructure that delivers 99% of the time, it delivers 88% of the time, that creates a level of content and enough for our people who are doing the utmost to make sure they deliver the best outcomes. So it's how do we kind of really promote that pride of being a right person and reflecting all the good we do as an industry?
I can definitely see where you're coming from on that. And so one of my soapbox topics is, how do we attract people to the railway? How do we get people to consider the rail industry as a career? Because at the milk rounds, then are they going towards somebody who perhaps from Network Rail or Rail Delivery Group, whoever's being represented, individual train operating companies, or are they being attracted more by the sexier industries, shall we say? And we just don't talk about ourselves enough, Ben. We don't talk about the exciting stuff that's happening, because there are so many different opportunities to do massive innovative change and transformation. But I feel like I probably need one of your drums from years ago. I need to bang a drum somewhere. I feel like we need to get people aware of these different opportunities that there are to work in rail.
Absolutely. And I'm really hopeful that GBR, kind of by bringing the industry a bit closer together, helps even better explain that range of opportunity you get from kind of massive engineering, capital projects, customer focus, operations. You kind of can have the whole range in one career if you come here. So I'm really hopeful that kind of helps that message.
Yeah, let's hope so. I know that the department have got a team of people looking at skills in terms of what the new railway will need and where we're going to get them from. So I'm quite hopeful on that. I'm an optimist by heart. So just coming to the end of our conversation, and I could carry on talking to you for ages because I think you've got a really interesting story. We've got some quick fire questions to finish off our conversation.
Yeah.
The first one is, who is inspiring you? If you look at, and I'm thinking in terms of leadership here, Ben. So whether that's a thought leadership, a business leader, somebody else, who's inspiring in terms of leadership?
So the context is I've got a young family, and I huge opportunities for them. But I guess the one kind of real challenge is the climate emergency, the climate challenge, and I've just the work that Bill Gates is doing. He wrote a book on how to avoid a climate emergency. It's a great read, and he kind of breaks it down into science and facts, which is great as well. Kind of gets past some of the it gets the narrative to be really clear about what we need to do as a society to resolve this, and it is resolvable. So really inspired by the work Bill Gates does and is doing to help move that climate agenda forward.
Okie doke, that's interesting. That's I've been having a few conversations around this particular quick fire question, and it's really interesting for me how many people are talking about leaders who are focused on the climate emergency. So, and this is new. This is a new development. In terms of a specific business, I think this is a harder question personally, but is there a business that you are aware of that is doing things differently, or looks interesting or inspiring in any particular way?
Yes. So the one that comes to mind actually is it's a funny business, but I'm not sure if you ever bought a TV. There's a company who sell TVs called Richer Sounds, and actually you thought, why is a TV sales business kind of doing things interesting? But actually, if you look into it, the stuff that the CEO's done in terms of he's moved the company, so he's committed to having it be completely staff owned by the time he departs, but it's currently 60% staff owned. He has this absolute focus on his staff about their engagement, them enjoying their work, about kind of being fair, honest, operating with integrity, just bringing that sort of culture to an industry which kind of fast moving consumer goods, you wouldn't necessarily expect it. You usually think it'd be pushy salespeople kind of pushing for kind of warranties and the rest, and actually it's completely not that. And I've only bought one TV ever, and I went to Richer Sounds, had the most amazing experience, and that prompted me to find out how come this company are doing this in such a different way. And it really is quite amazing the way that Julian Richer has kind of transformed that organisation.
Yes, he's written a book, hasn't he? I'm sure you're aware of that. I remember reading the book.
I've not read it actually. I did.
Yeah, Richer Sounds.
Is it?
It's a good one. It is. It's really interesting, and it will be interesting to see as well, because obviously that market is completely changing. So I remember my parents used to rent our telly from Rumbelows. There was a company called Rumbelows on the high street. They used to rent it. They didn't even buy it, because there was always something going wrong with it. So you would they'd come and replace it or tweak it or whatever. But we don't buy. It's like you said, you bought one telly, and it's kind of, we don't. It's not something that, especially now, my daughter watches everything on a laptop. So, she watches her films, etc. It'll be really interesting to see how I'm going to use one of the trendy words, how he pivots, in terms of what his market is going to be doing in the future. That'll be an interesting one to watch.
Absolutely.
We've both met. You've mentioned a Bill Gates book. I've mentioned Julian Richer's book. But my final question for you was: is there a book we all should read? In your view, is there one book that you can think, actually, I think everyone should read that?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mentioned I've got a young family. The kids are 5, 3, and 1. So my reading ability has diminished greatly over the course of the last years. I used to be quite a passionate reader, whereas now it's kind of few and far between. But I guess in a business context, the one I frequently come back to is Multipliers by Liz Wiseman.
Oh yeah,
And I first read it maybe 5 years ago. But just again, it's all about themes that really appeal to me, about getting the best from your team, about kind of having a really good team dynamic, and it's got practical tools. And I always think, books that give you kind of practical things you can do, questions you can ask, ways in which you can frame questions. I've always found them the most useful ones. So that's one that kind of always comes to mind.
Well, you're in good company because it's on the shelf behind me. And the reason that it's on the shelf behind me is because Andrew Hayes recommended it. So you're in good company there, Ben. So, and I agree, it's a great book, and there's some good practical stuff in there. That brings our conversation to a close. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. I think that your career story is so brilliant to listen to, Ben. And you're like a poster boy for Network Rail and for MTR, because the jobs that you're doing have been so varied. You've got loads of experience. It's almost making me think back to some of my friends in the industry who went through the BR graduate scheme, and that where you got to do something of everything, and you've been around, you've picked it all up, and you're clearly enjoying what you do as well. That really comes across, that you really enjoy your job and being part of the industry. So I know that our audience will enjoy listening, and your enthusiasm and your energy are very much appreciated. Thank you for making the time to join me on the podcast. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nina, for your time. I really appreciate it.
My huge thanks to Ben Milway, Finance and Business Systems Director from MTR Elizabeth Line, for joining me on today's episode of Intuitive Insights. My huge thanks to Alex Hines, Managing Director of Scotland Railway, for sharing so openly his thoughts in relation to the UK transport sector and also his experiences and career to date. I loved every minute.